You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James CREEDON. Here are our headlines this evening. South Africa's COVID-19 crisis shows no signs of abating as the number of infections surpasses 300,000. That means South Africa is now the fifth worst affected country globally and the worst in Africa. We'll bring you a report on how hospitals are coping with that. And tensions continue to bubble under the surface in Mali. An opposition coalition that demonstrated in their thousands last Friday calling for President Keita to resign has now agreed to call off a similar show of strength this Friday. We'll bring you all the latest, including some reactions from the Malian Prime Minister to that crisis. And it's called the Amasunzu, a traditional Rwandan hairstyle that is making a comeback. We'll take a look at why this ancient way of styling hair for men and women in Rwanda is seeing a resurgence. Thanks for watching. Now we start in South Africa, where the town of Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape province has seen a surge in COVID-19 cases. Hospitals were already overstretched before this crisis. Now, in many cases, patients are being turned away by doctors. So how are medical staff and patients coping? NICOLAS takes a look.
At this hospital in Port Elizabeth, the staff is turning people away. There is a surge of cases in the city and not enough hospital beds. The Eastern Cape is now the country's third worst affected province, while South Africa has the most cases of any nation on the continent.
Sick people are getting sicker. Some are dying on their legs, It's hurting. It's hurting really.
Because of a lack of doctors and medical equipment, one physician said her team could only accept a quarter of people who needed treatment.
It's heartbreaking in the sense that you end up yourself and your team having to say no to somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother, somebody's father, somebody's uncle.
Nearly 20% of South Africa's coronavirus fatalities have been in this province.
People are so afraid of this virus. When you pay the last respect, you throw a piece of soil to say goodbye to the person. With this pandemic, nothing of the sort happens.
At the end of March, the government had taken strict measures, but it eased the lockdown in May to boost its struggling economy. But now the government is worried again. On Sunday, it reimposed an alcohol ban and a night curfew in a bid to limit the spread of the virus.
Now, slightly better news when it comes to the COVID impact in West Africa. The first commercial flight in 4 months landed at Dakar International Airport on Wednesday. An Air Algérie passenger jet touched down around midnight, signalling the reopening of Senegal's airspace. Its closure has had a disastrous impact on tourism and travel. Our reporters went to check out how this much anticipated reopening is being managed. Let's take a look.
International air travel may have resumed, but air traffic on Wednesday was 15% of its usual volume. Just 7 passenger and 8 cargo flights flew in and out of Dakar's Blaise Diagne airport. Over the last 4 months, only cargo flights, medical evacuations or repatriation flights have had permission to take off and land here. The reopening of commercial flights is a real relief for these passengers leaving for Paris.
Je travaille là-bas. On m'appelle depuis longtemps, on m'appelle pour le travail, je peux aller.
Parce que nit ñu bari ñu ngi fi boole kay mu ñu dem. Kay moom yàlla def na affaire bi ubbi na ñu ngi dem.
Only people travelling are allowed inside the building. Thermal cameras check their body temperature and everyone is required to wear a mask and respect distancing rules. A medical team is on site to check on passengers.
Tout passager qui va embarquer dans un aéronef, quelle que soit sa provenance, doit présenter un test RT-PCR négatif à la COVID-19. Nous, agents du contrôle sanitaire, vérifions effectivement si le test COVID date de moins de 7 jours.
Flights to and from Senegal have only resumed with a limited number of countries. Senegalese nationals are currently not on the list of authorised countries that can travel within the European Union. So flights with Europe only concern certain travellers.
Un touriste, par exemple, qui a juste son visa, qui n'est pas résident dans le pays de l'Union européenne, ne peut pas se rendre dans ce pays. Et nous, on avait, en son temps, décidé d'appliquer la réciprocité. Ce n'est pas une mesure d'exception ou une mesure inamicale du Sénégal, c'est une mesure normale.
Negotiations to allow Senegalese back into the EU have begun with the European Union, which will revise its list every fortnight.
The Malian opposition alliance that is demanding President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita step down has called off a high-risk protest that was scheduled for this Friday. That would have been the second Friday in a row where supporters of the popular Imam Mahmoud Dicko's 5M alliance took to the streets in their thousands. Last week, the national TV channel ORTM went off the airwaves when protesters stormed the building. Nigeria's former President Goodluck Jonathan is currently in Bamako in a bid to mediate talks between the 5M opposition and the government. Now, heavy-handed policing has seen at least 11 deaths, with the opposition saying those numbers are higher. France 24 spoke to Mali's Prime Minister, Boubou Cisse. Let's take a listen to his response to those charges of police brutality.
Unfortunately, some security forces misbehaved. What happened is very regrettable. Of course, we apologize. There will be an investigation. The prosecutors will lodge a complaint. No stone will be left unturned in this investigation, and the necessary sanctions will be taken.
Now a catch-up of some other news stories from across the continent. Gabon has a new Prime Minister. Rose Christiane Osuka-Raponda had been Minister of Defence until this new appointment by President Ali Bongo. She's the first woman to hold the post of Prime Minister. Osuka-Raponda will have to negotiate a delicate political scene with President Bongo's health being poor since he suffered a stroke in 2018. A long medical leave even saw a brief coup attempt at that time. Osuka-Raponda has also held the posts of Budget Minister and Mayor of the capital, Libreville. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Eastern Libyan tribesmen in a show of solidarity on Thursday. This follows an appeal made on Tuesday in the Eastern Libyan Parliament for Egypt to help counter Turkey's support for the rival Tripoli government. Tensions continue to simmer between the internationally backed government in Tripoli and the rival Eastern administration led by Commander Khalifa Haftar. He is backed by Russia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. Zimbabwe's economy is expected to shrink by 4.5% this year, according to the finance minister. The news comes as no surprise, given the knock-on effects of COVID-19. The economy in Zimbabwe was already in tatters with rampant inflation, shortages in medicines and foreign currencies. Topping off the country's challenges, a major drought hit Zimbabwe this year, scorching crops and worsening a problem in food shortages. To Rwanda next, where an ancient hairstyle is re-emerging and finding a new wave of popularity. It's called the Amasunzu, and it's considered one of the most distinctive symbols of Rwandan culture. It was worn by men and by women before colonization saw its popularity fade. But in a bid to reconnect with their roots, young Rwandans are donning the look once again. Our team in Kigali sent us this report.
In this upmarket salon in Kigali, young Rwandan artists are rediscovering a hairstyle their ancestors wore. Didier, a hairdresser, grew up seeing images of the Amasunzu.
turi kuzigama cya kintu cya kera iyo nogosha amasunzu tukayafotora tugapostinga hari akantu kagaruka mu bantu bakavuga ngo ka kantu ka kera noneho kari kugaruka ugenda ubona abantu benshi bagaruka kwiyogoshesha amasunzu.
Didier's customers are prepared to pay 2 to 3 times more than the normal price for this haircut. It has become popular amongst young artists who want to showcase their Rwandan roots. SELEMAN is a painter. He portrays traditional symbols in his artwork, and now also through his hairstyle.
I want that people who see my artwork and myself remember our history, our own creations, we invented in our traditional. That's why I wear Amasunzu.
The haircut was worn as a sign of prestige by warriors, the wealthy, and young girls. It gradually disappeared after colonization in the 19th century.
Amasunzu, ça avait disparu par l'influence de la culture étrangère. Maintenant, la culture rwandaise commence à ressurgir et à s'imposer face au reste du monde. Moi, j'apprécie beaucoup les jeunes qui portent Amasunzu, puisque ce sont eux qui sont les gardiens de la culture rwandaise.
Even though the hairstyle is not as popular today, those who wear it say they are proud of getting in touch with their cultural roots.
Conservationists in Kenya are furious about plans to fence in a national park in Nairobi. As the capital city expanded, the wildlife park has seen an urban perimeter appear along 3/4 of its boundary. Closing off the final quarter of the perimeter would prevent wildlife from migrating outward to other nearby parks. Nicolas reports.
Nairobi's national park is Africa's only game reserve within a capital city. It has been fenced in on 3 sides as Nairobi has grown around it. There are now plans to close the 4th side to reduce conflict between people and animals. But conservationists are furious. They say it will prevent animals from going to larger parks beyond.
If you block that, then you're basically talking about making these animals lack space to move, lack space to breed, lack space to move from one habitat to another, move to better pastures during the dry season.
The Kenya Wildlife Service is supporting the fencing, despite the fact that one of its own reports 4 years ago stressed that it was the least suitable option. Shrinking ranges would cause conflict among rhinos and lions. Other species could not migrate, and inbreeding would be a problem. Environmentalists say the fence would be yet another bad sign for the game reserve. They already denounced a 6-kilometre bridge constructed in the park 2 years ago for a new-speed Chinese-built railway. And they regularly lament the presence of sewage from nearby settlements that empties into the park's river.
All right, that's all for this edition of Eye on Africa. Thanks for watching and good night.
Persecuted and exhausted, these Yazidi women have escaped to France from the Islamic State organization. Starting again in a new country and overcoming their traumas are a daily challenge for these families. Thanks to the efforts of Nobel Peace Prize winner Nadia Murad, they have the chance of a new future in France. Follow the story of these Yazidi families as they adapt to a life in an unfamiliar culture. Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.